Hello, welcome back to the Life from the Wrist podcast. Hope you're doing well today. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different and not something that I typically cover on Life from the Wrist, but to be honest, I think this is a pretty important move that's happened in the watch world. Jack Forster has announced, or I guess there was an announcement made that Jack Forster, who was the editor-in-chief of Hodinkee, will be joining WatchBox. Now, I typically don't talk about these types of moves or sort of gossip around the watch world, but Jack Forster is someone who is so significant in the watch world that I think it deserves a podcast on its own because of how he's contributed to the growth of the passion that we all have. If you're listening to this podcast, you're 100% of the chance that you know who Jack Forster is or what he's been able to accomplish at Hodinkee. And so this move is pretty significant for, I think, WatchBox, but also significant for Hodinkee. So Jack Forster has been with had worked with Hodinkee in a range of different roles. I believe he joined in somewhere in 2011 and was a huge part of sort of the editorial side of Hodinkee. He was really, when you think about Hodinkee and its founding, it was a lot about just people who were passionate about watches writing about them, writing about new watch releases or finding vintage watches online and talking about them, or being involved in sort of just like the current events of watch worlds, covering auctions of watches. And I think when you think about the founding of Hodinkee, is really driven by passion. People who are passionate about watches and writing about them. Prior to that, Jack Forster worked as the editor-in-chief at Revolution and was also a part of the puristpro.com, and then joined Hodinkee and really was a significant part of it. He was so significant, and Hodinkee created this series called Hey Hodinkee, which is basically like their Q&A and video content. And Jack Forster did such an amazing job in that series by answering questions that a lot of watch enthusiasts were interested in. I think Jack Forster had a unique sort of personality and position within how he wrote about watches, because he was able to be very, very technical in writing about watches, because I remember listening to one of the live streams that Hodinkee used to do, and he spoke about how he actually took apart a watch. Like when he was first getting into it, he actually just said, I'm going to take apart a watch and put it back together. And that's how he really learned about all the different parts of a watch and how they function. And by doing that, he became so knowledgeable about how watches worked. And so a lot of the technical pieces that were written on Hodinkee were written by him, and he did a very good job of kind of boiling it down to a language that we could understand, readers could understand. And I think that was such a significant part of what Hodinkee was about. And so he was a significant part of who Hodinkee was when it was first founded, and also to today, he was a hugely influential person when it came to what Hodinkee really was. What Hodinkee was today. And so, big move. Big move that WatchBox sort of basically poached a really significant person in Hodinkee's life. I will correct my statement that I said Jack Forster joined in 2011. He actually joined in 2015, where he served as the managing editor. So, that being said, he's now working at WatchBox, and his new role at WatchBox will be leading editorial, video, and global event programs at WatchBox. I think WatchBox and the people there are really excited to have him. I think he has some really great strengths. They've commented on the idea that his education and editorial excellence is really why they sort of brought him there, especially in video form. And I think Hey Hodinkee is a really great example of that. He sort of Jack Forster sort of commented on this and said sort of this was an opportunity that he really couldn't turn down because of the team he'd be working for, and that I'll just read a quote really quickly. He said that WatchBox is filled with an enormous amount not only of talent but very deep knowledge of watches, watchmaking, and watch history. And yeah, pretty crazy. He also said that I hope to work with the team here to produce content that, above all, represents and honors WatchBox's commitment to educating and informing, as well as serving the community of serious watch enthusiasts and collectors worldwide. So I think Jack is excited about what's to come, what's coming up here, and I think I mean, for all intents and purposes, Jack Forster is going to do a really phenomenal job there. His talents, his passion for the industry and watches are going to make him fly above all of it. So I think he's going to do a great job. Now, from Hodinkee's side, this is huge. Hodinkee is losing a very significant person in the brand's sort of in the company's sort of history and sort of founding voices that are so significant to its brand. Interestingly, today they released an article that sort of talked about it, and it was an announcement, and they said, meet our 5 new editors, and these are 5 individuals that they brought onto the team who are going to end up being voices for Hodinkee. And I thought that was quite an interesting move following the departure of Jack Forster, to try and, I guess, grow the spirit and grow more of the team that's going to be contributing to the site. I think one thing that we have to do as watch collectors is to maybe try and divide what Hodinkee was and where it's going now. Hodinkee was a blog. Hodinkee was passionate people talking about watches, and I think now it's sort of, after sort of the Series B funding that it went to and the hiring of a new CEO, I think it's sort of moving maybe a little bit away from where it was, and we have to treat it that way. We can't always hold on to the past. It's hard to do so, and so this happens. From WatchBox's side, I think this is very exciting. I don't think they're so heavily focused on content. I think they're very heavily focused on sort of the retail experience of pre-owned watches, and so I think they're gaining a really significant person in the watch world who will be a great voice for them. Whether or not people go to WatchBox is another question. Whether they're going to go to WatchBox to get that type of content, we'll have to see what Jack Forster does and the work that he does to try and do so. But we'll have to see what ends up happening. I don't know if you personally go to WatchBox to read about this, but we'll have to see what ends up happening. Of course, the watch world has their own opinions, and I'll sort of just try and talk about some of the things that I've read about or seen. A lot of people believe this to be a massive loss for Hodinkee. Some people comment even that Jack was maybe too good for Hodinkee, which I think is a little bit of a stretch. I think Jack was a part of Hodinkee, and it's sort of changed. There were some comments about the idea that, it was pretty crazy that Hodinkee didn't sort of like publish something about, Jack Forster leaving, or when John Buis left, they didn't really publish anything about that. And it's, I think it's just where Hodinkee is. I am 100% positive that they care about the people who are leaving them, and I'm sure that Ben, wished them well. Another example of that is like when Cara Barrett left. I thought that was really interesting that she had left, and I didn't really hear anything about it. But anyway, it is what it is. I think some people think that they're bleeding talent. That's, I think, your own sort of opinion that you have to figure out if you think that's the if you think that is the case. A lot of people are pointing to the the venture capital that's coming into this company and the appointment of the new CEO. It's sort of steering the brand of Hodinkee over a little bit more to the retail side. Listen, like I mentioned before, I think you have to treat Hodinkee as two separate things. It used to be a blog about watches, and it's moving more to a commercial space, and I think that's how you have to sort of treat it then and now, and find the good that you are interested in with all of that. Because otherwise, I don't think you're going to have a very good time reading about watches, because your outlets for reading about watches and watching watches is going to diminish pretty heavily. Jack, I don't know if if you're listening to this podcast. I doubt it. But if you are, huge congratulations on the move. I think this move speaks to your talents and your abilities and passions about watches. For watches, the ability to distill things into very simplistic ways of understanding them. And I wish you well. I wish you well. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do at this new company. And watch out, world, because I think WatchBox is going to really be competing in areas that maybe we haven't seen them compete before. So, I'll leave a link in the show notes of this podcast if you want to read an article about this move and what it kind of means. I'll also sort of put a link in the show notes to the Hodinkee website where they announced some 5 new editors. I think those 5 editors are going to do a fantastic job. Pretty exciting for that all to happen. If you are new to Life on the Wrist podcast, be sure to follow us. If you want to be notified about our podcast, we release podcasts every Tuesday, so pretty exciting about that. I'll also put a link in the show notes to a video welcoming Jack Forster to WatchBox, which I think is going to be pretty exciting. If you wouldn't mind rating this podcast, it really does help me out. And if you want to talk about this move, which is pretty significant, not something I typically talk about, but pretty significant for the watch world, you can hit us up on our website or on our social media accounts. If you just search Life on the Wrist on any of the platforms that you are on, you will find us. So be sure to do that if you want to talk about this a little bit more. And with that said, guys, thank you so much for listening to this podcast, and until next time.